I'm Ro, maker and breaker of things here on DIY Dive. In today's project, we're gonna learn how to go from the ground to the fun. Trampoline stairs.
Dive, dive, dive.
This is our trampoline. In the year or so that we've had it, we've tried many things some might call stairs. For the first few days, a lawn chair served as our primary means of conveyance. Next, we tested some concrete blocks. These were cheap, quick, and easy to set up, but had the downside of being prone to causing the occasional scrape or bruise.
Hurt my knees coming up and down those stairs.
Adding an old speaker cabinet behind the blocks stabilized them a good deal and was a big hit since it had space to sit for young kids to deal with shoes. But we need something purpose-built. So now, instead of all those crazy harebrained ideas, we're gonna do something custom-built. It's like a deck, just for this space. Nice, solid, and safe for my kids to go up and down in the trampoline. Here we go. Looking around for inspiration, I saw that our neighbors used some logs. While this seemed like an excellent solution, I wanted something a bit grander. I knew I wanted the stairs to be freestanding, and I knew I wanted a big platform on top.
A platform.
Then it hit me. Steps of the gods. Why not take a cue from the ancient Aztec temples? What resulted was a 4-tiered structure with planks placed on top like a deck on each tier. My last requirement for the project was to use reclaimed pallet wood. Anybody who wants quick tips converting free pallets to project wood can find a link in the description for our pallet teardown video. I then spent some time mocking up plans, curating a cut list, and was ready to get to work. I started with the top tier, measuring and marking both the length and the angle of all my cuts. A miter saw made quick work of the cuts. A clamp came in very handy when I needed to cut a smaller piece than I wanted to hold or to cut more than a single piece of a similar size. With all the parts in hand, I tested the layout to make sure they would all fit. The good thing I did because I misread the length of some parts. Once I remade those parts, I was ready to continue. Now, if I were buying wood to build this, I'd have used 2x8s for the support tiers. Instead, I doubled the parts to build 2 of each tier from the pallet wood that I have on hand. Once the parts were laid out, I marked where the inner and outer supports should line up. Then I used 2-inch decking screws to connect them all together. I was unsure of my measurements on these first ones and ended up trimming them as I was putting it all together. In hindsight, I shouldn't have done that, but instead leveraged them to fit together with clamps. My calculations were right, and they were all cut correctly. I should have trusted the plan and calculation. Then I did all that again on the top tier. For the second largest tier, I began similarly, cutting the pieces before assembling them. I removed a few nails left over from the pallet disassembly process. I needed a larger surface to assemble and moved indoors to my temporary work table. Moving to a larger assembly area, I used 2-inch screws to fasten all the parts together. I discovered a neat trick using 2 corner pieces and some clamps to make everything line up very nicely. This made the corners much easier, safer, and more secure than before. This tier has a bit of a unique feature that one side of the inner supports needed to be cut at a 45-degree angle. So I verified this by hand and made sure it was square. It was about that time that my handy helper joined in on the building fun. The technique for the corners was so successful that I adapted something similar for the inner supports. The clamp and drill technique resulted in a very strong joint, the inner support with a 45-degree angle to the corner pieces. Then, as before, I did all this a second time. With the third largest tier, the width of the most extended piece in the back started becoming too large for the pallet wood that I had, so I had to cut 2 pieces, each making up half of the required length. I joined them together on the assembly table. This tier had a peculiar connection with the corner piece in front and the inner support right on the joint. After failing miserably in breaking a drill bit, I developed a technique of taking a small piece of scrap wood and securing it to the inside of the support. I started with too large a space and too short a fastener. I switched to a 2.5-inch fastener and had success with just enough space, so the scrap piece didn't come into contact with the front when clamped, but pulled the support and held it securely. This kept all the parts stationary, kept my drill bits intact, and made for a very strong joint. These corners required a smaller spacing between fasteners to fit all four. 2 fasteners for the corner to the front, and 2 from the front to the inner support through the corner. As part piles got bigger, I recruited more assistance from my handy helper. I'm so lucky. That's such a good wood carrier in the family.
Yep, Dad. When I was a baby, I could also jump.
You could carry wood as a baby?
Yes, but I couldn't do it when I was 1. I could only. Did you not know? I could do it when I was only 2.
As with the third tier, the bottom tier also had its pieces made from 2 pieces cut to half the required length, paired together with a piece of scrap wood. I started the assembly by stacking all the tiers for a test fit. Alrighty, well with all of them here, looks like they generally fit together as I expect. Now I'm gonna take them all down. We're gonna manually secure them to each other, starting with the bottom, going all the way up to the top. We'll get to that now. I cut new part of scrap wood, 4 for each tier, to secure the 2 similar pairings together, and then secure the pairing to all the different size tiers below for a total of 16 new parts. I would drive 2 screws close together on top and 2 fasteners further apart on the bottom. I kinda eyeballed it and just did what felt right as I went along. For the top decking, I basically went by hand, piece by piece, measured and cut, and filled them in like a mosaic puzzle. Looking good. Now on to the finishing stage. Finishing consisted of, well, as you can see, sanding, a bit more sanding, and finally some sanding. After the sanding, I rinsed off all the dust and left the structure to dry overnight. I must admit, I loved the look of the pallet wood deck, but I loved the idea of having traction, weatherproofing, and splinter-free feet even more, using textured decking overcoat. I let the paint dry just a little, then I used a large drywall knife to knock down all the sharp peaks. Time for arts and crafts, family style. We worked together to turn our simple white steps into a work of family-inspired art. We captured kids' handprints. I used my wife's unique calligraphy talents for the quote. If you know where this is from or you have a killer quote idea, please share it in the comment. I was pleased to see everyone make it their own, and everyone was thrilled with the final results. If you'd like to build this project, I have plans available on DIYdive.com. If this project sparked ideas for your own stairs, I'd love to hear about them down in the comments section. We have other projects and teardown videos that you can check out, and if you aren't subscribed, please do so. Also, you can hit the bell and be notified anytime that I upload new stuff. That's all for this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the next dive. Okay, you make it clap. Whoop. That won't work.
They both shit. We did it. My turn. That should be super tight. You still don't know what I'm gonna do.
Well, it'll get painted once I'm done putting these on there. Isn't that cool?